guys? Welcome to another episode of the Tampa Bay Real Producers Podcast. This, of course, is the podcast that is made for real producers by real producers and with none other than Tampa Bay's real producers. So we get to hang out today with Mr. Sean Bates. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, Don. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having you here today. We're excited to have you on
again.
the podcast. Those of you who might not know, Sean actually helped my wife and I in our initial process of like moving down here to this area, showed us a bunch of different properties. We ended up not even going with the property that he ended up showing us.
Rude.
Yes, very rude. I know. It's all my fault. We had a conversation off camera about how I regret not doing that. So we'll have to dive into that. Maybe that's another podcast, I guess, that we'll get to. But Sean is with EXP Realty. Many of you probably know him. He runs a great, successful organization, the Bello Group, right?
Bello Home Team.
Bello Home Team. Awesome. We'll dive into that too. But let's start a little bit just with your background. Did you grow up in this market? If not, how you got yourself to Tampa, and when did real estate become a passion for you?
So, born and raised in Florida, born in Jacksonville, raised in the Tampa Bay area, pretty much like Hudson and Spring Hill.
Cool.
For most of my childhood. Graduated from high school, moved to Tampa. Went to college to get a degree in business. Didn't know what I was going to do, really. Just get a degree in business and went into banking at that point. So I kind of thought that was going to be my career. My senior year of high school, I was actually a bank teller at Barnett Bank, which they don't exist anymore. They were bought out, amongst the many bank buyouts that happened. And I imagined and thought that would be my career. It was kind of looked at like, this is a good, stable job, and this is something that you can aspire to. So started in banking, worked as a bank teller, worked as a head teller, went through the kind of moved up into positions, as branch manager, things like that. So that was it. That was going to be like my life.
Okay.
It was going to be, in the finance industry.
Working bank hours, employee, all that stuff.
Weekends off, all that stuff. I had
perfect transition into real estate.
Had a stint at Chase for 5 years. Little bit separate. Actually did collections for 5 years.
Okay.
So
that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, that was interesting because it gave me the ability to learn how to chase people.
Makes sense.
Which with what we do in real estate kind of helped a little bit. Sorry,
I could see the connection
right now.
Yeah, I could see the connection. So you ended up, how long did you work in the banking?
15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were an employee this whole time, right? And then what was it? How did it get into your head? You know what? Maybe I'll end up becoming a 1099 independent contractor and go into real estate. Like, how did that connection happen?
So it didn't. Like, that wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't something I was planning. So what happened at the time was I was in the middle of going through a life change, going through a divorce, and went through the process of buying my own house. And hold on a second. I'm like,
yeah, no worries,
super
bro.
nervous.
Take your time, whatever you need. By the way, no one's going to watch it, so it's all good.
Well, I know that'll all get cut out anyways, but I'm just like good. anxious.
Do you want a water?
Yeah.
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 Rob, you mind grabbing one? Thank you, buddy. You can keep chatting whenever you're ready. Bello Home Group, right?
Bello Home Team.
Sorry, team. Cool.
Thank you. No.
Rob has that effect on people sometimes.
I'm all dry mouth and I'm like conscious of it, and then I'm getting nervous because I'm like, I can't talk.
Oh, you're sounding good, bro. Don't even worry about it. We were just chatting about your transition from when you were banking to how you got yourself into real estate. You were talking about how you kind of were looking at your own home, I think.
Yeah, so at the time, was in the process of going through a divorce, needed to purchase my own home now so that I had a place for me and my boys. And I had a good real estate professional, someone that was very experienced in the industry, but I found myself just like I was doing what I thought was everything. Like I was finding all the houses.
What you thought should have been their job.
Yeah. Which in hindsight, I was doing what every consumer does, right?
Sure.
Looking at Zillow and looking at houses and like this one, all over the radar. But at the time,
I can relate to that.
And it didn't even click at that time. So got my house, closed, everything was good. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe I should do real estate part-time. We can earn a little bit of extra money. It'll help supplement what I'm making at the bank right now. And this is back in 2012.
Okay.
So,
interesting time too, wasn't that right? Well, I guess it was after kind of the real crash, right? Which was
it was
more
at
like
the bottom.
Yeah.
It was at the bottom, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like the best time in the market.
Yep.
To be, considering real estate, I guess. But for me, I'm just thinking if I can do 1 or 2 deals a year, maybe I can add to the $47,000 a year that I'm making as a bank manager, branch manager at the credit union. Managing multiple offices, driving to South Tampa and downtown every day to see both offices, driving back up to Land O'Lakes every day, doing the thing with kids, stuff like that. It was a lot. It was a demanding schedule there. So I said, well, let me get licensed. Maybe I can earn a little bit extra money. As soon as I got licensed, I got pinged, a message, DM'd, whatever, from Russ, who ended up becoming my mentor. Russ Lagan, I don't know if you know Russ or not.
No.
Basically saying, hey, I saw you got licensed. If you're interested in going to real estate, let's have a conversation.
Cool.
That was it. He's at Berkshire Hathaway at the time.
How did you know
broker.
Russ?
He was a client of mine at the credit union.
Gotcha.
So I had just done his loan for his Porsche.
Yep.
He was a happy guy, so I really didn't know him. He was a client.
Sure.
So he reached out, said, hey, if you're interested, let's talk. So we talk, and conversation is his typical conversation. You're going to go into real estate. This is what you need to do. You need to, make sure that you start talking to your sphere of influence, the people like and trust. You need to start capturing their information, start letting them know what you do. This is how you're going to, bridge into real estate so that you can make some money.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. He said, but I also have this other thing that you may be interested in. I'm looking for someone. Here's what it is. So essentially, he was he was representing or the head of one of the 3 teams that were buyers for the hedge funds that had come in and started.
I remember those days.
Buying all.
We
the
had
houses.
moved here in 2012, and I, as you know, have an interest in real estate investing.
Yeah.
And BlackRock was one of them. American Homes for Rent was another one.
Progress Residential, Frio.
I think the Merit, Colony Homes, if I remember correctly, was one. And there was a time there where I was even working a little bit as like a middleman between trying to bring these big real estate portfolios to these hedge funds. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah.
So he said, I have this thing. You might be interested. He starts telling me about it. Essentially, we scrub these properties. We check them to see if they fit the criteria for the hedge fund. And if they do, then they buy it.
Yep.
That's how we get paid commission. I said, well, I like that. That sounds better.
Yep.
That sounds more like my speed. It's a numbers thing. I'm a banker
You're
for
a bank
15
guy.
years at this point. And, I'm accustomed to volume. I'm accustomed to goals. I'm accustomed to sales. So it seems like it's a natural progression, right? So, so I start helping him, and what I'm doing is I'm the one just scrubbing the properties. So every night I get home, get kids situated, and then from 9 p.m. until 12, till midnight every night, I'm in MLS scrubbing properties, looking for properties, putting running the data, running the numbers, running the Excel spreadsheets, and putting everything in to see if it fits for them, and then typing up this proposal and sending it an email. And the way it worked at that time, it was very low tech. Whatever team got the proposal in first was the one that got the opportunity to buy it, as long as it made sense.
Yep.
There was no real systems or anything like that. Right. So that was it. I was just checking the MLS, refresh, making sure that, that it fit the criteria. I almost got fired 5 times within the first probably 60 days because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to price houses. I didn't know how to run comps. I did everything wrong. So Russ literally said, had to call me multiple times and be like, hey, you're not doing this right. You got to do this.
So this was under Russ's team.
Yeah, this is under him. So
what brokerage was that?
At the time, it was with he left from being the managing broker at Prudential Tropical, not even Berkshire, Prudential Tropical, and we went over to Homeward Real Estate.
Okay.
So John Montesano, I think he still maybe owns the brokerage over here in Tampa.
Yep.
And that was it.
So how long did that game plan last, where you were working more with these REITs and these hedge funds?
So
eventually, that's what I'm assuming you learned how to do comps, right?
Yeah,
there. So
at that
makes
time, I was getting 10% of the commission to do what I was doing.
Gotcha.
So like everything else was taken care of. I had no idea what any of it of the other stuff was. 10% of the commission.
Yep.
So I'm plugging away doing this every day, day in, day out for a couple months. about 3 months in, we have, I don't know, 6, 7 houses under contract. And I start adding up the 10%, and I'm like, well, that could be more than what I'm making now.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit, gave my 2 weeks notice. Within
I'm
that
sure you had
time
some
frame,
butterflies in the stomach when that decision came up.
It was nerve wracking.
Was this your first? I know you said your background really wasn't in sales, so when you made that decision, was that really the first time that you were going for any sort of a commission only type of a role compared to having some sort of a consistent paycheck?
Yeah, so I'd always been in an environment where sales was important, where goals were important, even in collections, right? We had goals and collections to meet. So that was always very big part of what I did. So this felt natural. It just felt like I could do this. This is easy. This is just more production. It's a production environment.
Yep.
And truly it was. So gave my notice. July 1st, 2013 was my first day of being unemployable.
Gotcha.
So from that point on, I've been in real estate.
Now, did you find, Sean, that transition, for many people, when they do that, because I have had a couple people on the podcast who have had backgrounds similar to yours, where they were always just W-2, pay for their time type of a concept, right? For some of those people, it's very challenging in that first year to be like, what do I do now? Like I don't have a schedule I have to follow. I got to create my own. I got to have a disciplined model. Like that's, for some people, it's very hard to make that transition. Did you find that yourself, or was it fairly easy for you?
So for me, I was so accustomed to being in an office that first day that I didn't have an office, I literally called Russ. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do. So I went for a run. You know what I mean? Like get out some of the anxious energy,
get the
whatever.
anxiety out,
and then just started going to the office every day. We had an office to go to over in Lutz, and I would get up and go to the office every day because that's what I was used to doing.
Makes sense.
The good thing
so you created your own structure
is that Russ was an office guy because he was a managing broker for so long. He was accustomed being in an office. So I got to sit in the same room with him for a year every day. So not only was I showing up and doing what I needed to do to make sure that we were purchasing houses that we were supposed to, but I had access to my mentor on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So it was huge. It was huge. It was probably the most important factor, I would say, are those two things: showing up on a consistent basis daily and having access to someone that can help me.
Yeah, that's good tips. We've had a lot of conversations before on this podcast about the importance of mentors.
Yep.
And you've brought up Russ a few different times now as really seeming like he was an important element in you getting that understanding of real estate, since it sounds like you didn't really have a background in this.
Right.
So there was a lot to learn, I'm sure, just about the mechanics, but also the sales side of what's involved to build a business. So do you remember what you did in your first year as a solo agent?
So the first year, I think I closed $13 million in volume.
It's a great first year.
65 transactions, if I'm not mistaken.
That was still working with the REITs and the hedge funds?
Yep.
Okay.
So my first 2 years, that's all I did.
Gotcha.
I didn't do anything outside of that. And the whole time he's yelling at me, you got to work on your regular business. You got to work. You got to nurture your sphere of influence.
This isn't going to last forever.
It's not going to last forever. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And what happens when this stops? That was the question that I kept getting. And then, about, I would say probably a year and a half in, we got an email and they said, we're not buying this month. And I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do?
Wow. He was right this whole time.
Yeah. So like
the spigot is being turned off.
We're not buying this month. And that's a big deal. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm like, feed my family. Like this is the sole income. Like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So at that point, that's when I transitioned, partnered and became a Zillow Premier agent, kind of started following what regular traditional.
So thankfully you had some money
activities
saved up from the period of time that you can just start reinvesting back into your business.
Right.
And it sounds like you dove right in with like lead expenses and lead flow and invested into Zillow and other platforms in order to kind of bridge that gap.
Yep. So I had because now by this point we had transitioned out of Homeward to Carrington Real Estate.
Okay.
And at Carrington had other divisions, like they had mortgage and stuff like that. So then, started learning about partnerships with, lenders and things like that.
Yep.
So I ended up partnering with one of the top Carrington lenders. They helped with the Zillow spend, started just paying attention to like what people were doing with like postcards, mailers, things like that, and started basically picking up the activities that other, real estate agents were doing.
Yeah. Was Russ still your mentor at that time?
He was.
Okay.
Yep.
So he was with Carrington as well.
So he moved to Carrington, actually became part owner. Well, it was Realty Direct here in Tampa, became part owner of the Realty Direct office. Realty Direct bought out Carrington, or Carrington bought out Realty Direct within a year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, when you were, did you find, Sean, that your business kind of just grew year by year? Was it a slow progression, or was it much more of a roller coaster than that?
So we're 2 years in. So what, 13, 14, from probably around 2015 to 2018, I started transitioning my business more traditional and going away from the kind of the hedge fund business. There was a couple reasons. One, it was actually quite expensive, even though it was an easier kind of straightforward job. You know, it was very production oriented, so I could just do these things, and I knew there was a paycheck, right? Yep. But they became a licensed brokerage themselves, the hedge fund. So then they started taking 40% off the top of every deal.
Right.
And then I have splits with Russ, and then I splits with brokerages. So I ended up, got to the point where I was making about 25 cents on the dollar for every commission check with them. And I just figured at that point, if I have to do 4 deals to equal what one regular traditional real estate deal is, let me just focus on traditional real estate. So over that time frame, the business shifted from the hedge fund to, more traditional real estate.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then at some point you started, at least the idea started happening, that you wanted to build a team.
Yeah.
Right. So how many years were you operating as an individual producer before that whole team building process started?
So it was November 2018 is when I made the switch over to eXp Realty.
Okay.
And the transition there was, one, so that I could go to a brokerage that I felt I was getting some value. And there was a competition factor in that as well, which we can also talk about. But
sure.
It was so that I felt that I was getting value, and 2, so that I could start a team.
Getting value in terms of like training programs or support in some ways?
Correct. Yeah. So Carrington was great. It was just, I guess, equivalent to any other real estate brokerage
boutique
model.
brokerage, yeah.
But they didn't really have anything that I was using. So it came to the point after being there for probably close to 3 years, just over 2 years, where I was the top producing agent for them nationwide. And I wasn't using their systems, and I wasn't taking their REO business that they were giving to agents.
Yep.
And I wasn't doing anything that they were giving or saying, do this if you want to be a successful agent.
Right.
But I was their top agent.
You just found your own path.
So it had me questioning, why am I here? What value am I getting for what I'm paying? For the splits that I'm paying. And paying a split's not a problem.
Sure.
I understand a business model, and you have to have money to run a business. So it wasn't that. It was just, what am I getting for that?
Sure.
So I started looking around at different brokerages and interviewing and talking to different brokerages on where I was going to go, what I was going to do. So I talked to Remax and some local, more boutique brokerages in the area, and kept trying to poke holes in EXP and just kept circling back. By that point, Carrington...
EXP wasn't even around that long, were they? Weren't they a newer brokerage at that
So
point?
I think EXP is 11 years, if I'm not mistaken right now. I think it's like 11 years. So yeah, they're newer to the game.
Yeah.
At that time. Definitely not nearly as many. I think there's close to 90,000 agents in EXP now.
Right.
I think at that time it was maybe in the 30,000 kind of range of how many agents were at EXP.
There was somebody who tried to recruit me once into EXP, and I remember the conversation was revolving a lot around how, no walls type of a brokerage, like a digital brokerage, one that that's where the future is heading.
Yeah.
And I did, think that, like you said, there was an element of that digital training and support. And I'm assuming they still have great dashboards and portals that people have access to be able to help them in all these different ways. And when you think about wanting to scale, which I know you've done, right, as a team, I'm assuming those systems have been very helpful in allowing you to do that, right, in scaling?
Well, they are helpful, and there's a couple reasons for that. You can build a team that's not geographically centered in one place.
Right.
So because EXP systems are available to everyone within the organization, essentially you have an office to go to. It's a virtual office.
Yep.
You go in and you play the video game. You go in, you log into the EXP world.
Yep.
And you take put your little
VR headset on,
your little Don, and he runs over to whatever building he needs to go to, to go talk to someone at accounting or to talk to the broker if you want to talk to the Florida broker.
Gotcha.
There's somebody in the Florida broker room. Like right now, I could go run in there and talk to someone if I have a question.
Huh.
Where if you're with a traditional type of, brick and mortar
Right.
brokerage, like your broker may not be available.
Yeah,
You
of
know,
course.
for us, there's always a broker available. There's
Yeah.
multiple brokers for the state, and somebody's always there to talk to,
Yep.
which is cool, because now you're getting support almost on demand. And that's a big deal because everything we do today is on demand.
Yeah, no
We
doubt.
get food delivered here in, a couple of minutes if we want it because it's on demand.
Absolutely.
You can get a car from Turo on demand. Like you can get whatever you want on demand.
Yep.
And the support and service is on demand. The training that they offer is 50 hours a week. Like there's training all the time.
So that's what was appealing to you most when you made the switch. Yeah. And then did you start this team building process right away when you joined EXP?
Yeah,
or did
so
that still
right
come
away,
later?
Still painfully going through the team building process because, who the hell knows what they're doing, right? When you do it the first time.
Of course, yeah. Especially if you've never actually been, because we've had different people on here that have built some great teams, and it's a different business altogether. Yeah. Like it's not just about serving your clients. You're now putting your leadership hat on.
Right.
And it's about how do I actually attract the type of agent that I would want to build with?
Right.
What do I need to do to serve them? Because they become your client, really, in a way. So that transition for you, and do you still do personal production?
I do. So the big challenge for me is that I'm still very involved in personal production. Okay. So I have not pulled back yet and pushed that over.
Gotcha.
And I think part of that is since I started a team, which was in probably the middle of 2019.
Yep.
We've been in a very weird kind of market every year. Right. It's different.
We've had some booms and busts so far. Yeah.
So things are just been all over the place.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've been constantly trying to figure out what's going on with the market to make sure that our clients are aware. So that's really the conversation that exists within the team is like, hey, what's going on with the market? So the focus hasn't been on growing the team, scaling real big.
Gotcha. How many agents do you have now?
Right now we're at 5 agents.
And you mentioned earlier off camera that you had your best year ever last year, right?
Yes.
That was in terms of number of families that you served.
Number of transactions, yes.
Which was over 100, Is that correct? First time that you guys broke 100?
First time breaking 100 transactions, which felt good to me because for me that was an elusive number. I'd been chasing it. I'd hit 97, 98 transactions before.
Yep.
Never quite got there, so that was pretty cool.
Now, of those 100 plus, how many of them were you personally? Are you kind of still leading the team through your own numbers?
I think last year about 50% of that was volume that I had.
Got it. Awesome.
A good portion of the business that I generate gets pushed back to the team.
How do you balance that? That's always a question that comes up because you're not, again, the first person we've talked to who also does individual production and has a team. So when leads come in, what's your philosophy on how you determine what you're individually serving, what goes to the team? How do you view that?
So if it's anything that's sphere of influence, somebody that I've worked with in the past clients, things like that, generally those are going to be people that I'm going to work with. Mm-hmm. You have to think now 10 years in, it feels like I just started, but 10 years in, there's about 800
contacts,
closings that we've done, that I've done in that time. So
not all a good referral basis from that.
Yeah. So not all of those, obviously, first 2 years was kind of investor stuff and then some after that. So not all of that is actual families that we helped, but there's probably 500 families that we've helped close in that time frame. So I get a good portion of the business just referred in.
Yeah.
And then people know me now because I've been in the area. I've been in Land O'Lakes. I've been in Lutz. They've seen from the video and the content that we've just been putting out for years and years and years on social media. They get to know who we are. They get to recognize people. So anybody that kind of comes in requesting me or has worked with me will stick with me. If it's outside lead sources, generally that's what I'm pushing to the team for them to work with.
You're still investing in different lead sources, whether that's Zillow or others. Yeah.
Yep. Still have different lead sources. Zillow, still doing it years later. It's not the easiest way, but I think what I've come to learn in this business is there's no easy way, and you don't get into real estate thinking it's easy because otherwise you're going to be let down.
No doubt. That's when There's an old adage that when you think things are easy, that's usually when God laughs, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's always a next challenge coming your way.
That's right.
What do you look for, Sean, in somebody who you're interested in maybe adding to your team? What are some of the qualities and characteristics that you think are needed for someone to qualify in your mind as a member of your organization?
So I kind of alluded to this as being one, very important on my own success early on. I'm looking for people that will show up, and what that means is not only physically be present, but are willing to put in the work. Because in order to build a good, profitable, successful real estate business, you have to be willing to put in work.
Yep.
And we know based on the statistics, 80% of real estate agents, make a part-time living, those are not the agents that we want. We don't want part-time agents. They can be part-time if they have the right work ethic.
Sure.
But we don't want the people that are not willing to come in and sit at the desk and do what they need to do. And there's no one way that we teach our team to build their business. We cover, 20 different ways that they can generate business, generate leads, and let them figure out what that is based on their personality style and what's best for them.
Yep.
But they better do it every day.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
that consistency is key.
Well, that's it. And it could be the consistency is fundamentally the key. It's the showing up, and if you have online leads, calling those people, following up with them,
totally,
day in and day out.
And if you can tap into certain systems and programs that help you with that, all the better, right? And I know EXP provides a lot of that too.
Yep.
What do you personally enjoy more? Like working as a team leader, the building process, the coaching and supporting and development of people as a team leader, working directly in the real estate side, the numbers, the negotiations, the contracts, dealing with buyers and sellers. Like, do you find yourself being more attracted to one or the other?
So I think I'm a little more logical, and I'm more numbers and more fact-based in the way that I approach things. I love the contract. I love, transacting based on the contract, and I love sharing that with my team. I love helping them in and out of scenarios when it comes to, almost acting to help them like a broker would, not being the broker, but helping them in that fashion to work through deals when there's difficulties, and showing them, how easy it can be if it's done right.
Yep.
And priding the fact that we know what the majority of agents don't. Something as simple as knowing the contract and knowing how it's written and knowing how it impacts a buyer and a seller and, the agents on both sides and who's responsible for what and who's not. Those are big things. It's potentially the most expensive financial decision anybody's going to make in their life.
For sure.
And, it's not taught in classes.
Nope.
So,
it's amazing how they can have a very different experience based on the agent they're working with.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I've heard many, many times from some of the top agents that we've interviewed that what got them interested in real estate was having a bad experience with an agent who just didn't do what they thought should be done, right? Now, you said something similar, but you also said that your agent was fine. You just you did a lot of it yourself, right? Yeah. But I think it's kind of common where you see, I say these numbers all the time. There's over 20,000 people that are licensed in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Only 15,000 agents did at least a deal last year. So that's over 6,000 people that are licensed who didn't even do a transaction, right?
Right.
And then of those 15,000 that did at least a deal, the vast majority of them did less than 5, right? For the year. So when we try to focus on the top 500, which you're obviously in, it's really an elite group of the people that are treating it, like you said, as a full-time business. And they've built systems, they take it seriously, and in some cases have built an organization like you have to try to grow from. So I think about one of the guys I know on your team is Anthony, right? Anthony Fonte. A little shout out to Anthony out there. You might be watching live on Anthony. Facebook. Who knows? But I know that he really, loves you, admires your culture, what you've built organizationally with your team. We've had conversations, actually, Anthony and I, about why he loves working with you. Is there anything specific, Sean, that you would share that you think is helpful for people out there who might be team building, or maybe they don't have a team but they want one? or they're already building a team and they just want to grow it more or make it more close-knit and dynamic. Is there anything you feel like you've done well from a cultural standpoint, or anything else that you think has really been helpful in creating a strong-knit group, a strong-knit team?
So, I think for me, I aspire to grow this team and I aspire to be a leader, and it's the scariest thing that I do on a daily basis because I don't want to fail the people that I'm leading, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
And I've failed plenty, if you're not failing, you're not growing, right? So I always joke around, and I tell clients all the time, and I tell just people all the time, I screw up every day, I get told that I screw up every day, but I keep doing it. That's kind of how it goes. So in growing a team, I would say the most important thing is understand why you're growing a team. If you want to do that, why do you want to do that? What is the reason for that? Is it because you want to help other individuals to become better agents? Is it because you want to earn more and you need them to help you scale? What is the reason for that? And then build your business that way, because there's very different team structures out there. So as a team lead, as I'm starting to analyze and see other teams that are out there and that are very successful, they run their businesses very different. And that's something that I don't think I did at up front. I think I just kind of was like, well, I can only do so many transactions myself, so let me get people to help.
Yeah.
And then started going about it that way, but never really put that structure in place to support that.
Yep.
And if you don't have that structure in place, you're going to end up getting stalled and then have to go back and fix that.
Yep.
So, a couple of years in now, I'm at that point where I'm like, shit, I'm getting stalled. We got to go back and fix some things before we can even think about going bigger, because we were bigger.
Yep.
But then lack of structure in place, we've lost agents as a result, and that's painful.
What do you think when you say lack of structure? Is there one thing that comes to mind? What's an example of something that you think was a lesson you learned?
I think a good onboarding system up front is very important. And it's important because you need to understand how to support that person that's coming onto your team based on the level of experience that they have. So it's going to be different. It's going to be multifaceted. Or you only bring in certain people that are experienced and not experienced, whatever that might be. But you have to have the systems in place. If it's an agent that's never done real estate, there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
You have to really be able to understand how to nurture them and show them the path, or else they're not going to get the support they need, and they're going to be part of that 80%.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And I
it
don't
goes back
want
to what you said too earlier about knowing why, right? You want to build the team, because once you can answer that question, then it should direct you into what type of recruiting you're trying to do, right? Are you trying to recruit new agents because that's why you want to build the organization and developing people from scratch? Do you want to only work with experienced agents who have a certain level of background and skill set and deal volume, and that's a totally different recruiting, right? Yeah, totally different philosophy as to how you go about attracting those people and what that system needs to look like. So what you said earlier makes a ton of sense. It really does start with, what do you really want? What type of an organization are you trying to build? We have a few minutes on just a transition from some personal questions for people who might not know you yet as well, and so that audience can get to know Sean. Couple things. So you mentioned earlier your boys. How old are your boys now?
So Gavin is 15 and Luca is 13. So
I remember, are they into baseball?
Gavin was baseball.
Okay.
Gavin is now basketball. So he is he's a sophomore at Land O'Lakes Christian.
Nice.
He played JV basketball last year and then got bumped to varsity as a freshman in the season.
Awesome.
It was very exciting for me to see, because
you a sports guy?
A little bit. I follow some stuff. I'm not real heavy. I play fantasy football, stuff like that. But I don't have a lot of extra time.
We could have a whole other podcast about that.
Yeah. Trust. Yeah.
I'm into fantasy football myself.
Too many injuries.
Tell me about it. It's been a rough year.
So watching him go from being a star at the JV level and then getting bumped up to varsity and then being the smallest kid on the team and not being the starter was fantastic for me, because it really kind of humbled him a little bit, which he needed, because he was that's cool. Feeling on top of the world,
My boys are just starting to get into Little League at Land O'Lakes, where I'm coaching them at Land O'Lakes Little League, which surprisingly, I didn't realize this. They have a pretty good track record of development of kids in baseball anyway. our coach over there, Tom Ketterer, shout out to him. He's been coaching 35 years in the game. One of the fields over there at the rec center is named after him.
Okay.
So it's kind of, I've been learning a lot just watching him work with the boys and all the different drills and stuff that he does. It's been kind of fascinating. But I've been loving it too. Like getting involved, watching them. My boys are a little younger than yours. I have a 8-year-old and a 6-year-old on that side. But what do you guys love to do for fun when you're relaxing and you're not able to focus as much on real estate? What keeps the Bates crew happy?
So they're at the age right now where obviously social media takes precedent. They love cars. They're into cars, and I have younger brothers. One of them owns a shop and does car repair.
Cool.
One of my other brothers, is very into cars. So they love cars now. So there's a group text that we have every single day with cars from Facebook Marketplace going back and forth for Gavin because it's almost that time for him to get a car.
Yep.
Which is really fun.
That's got to be nerve-wracking too. I can't even imagine those days when I'm
that
16-year-old who wants to get licensed for the first time.
It's nice having a chauffeur.
I remember how I drove at 16 and that would scare the crap out of me.
He's a pretty conservative driver, so I watched it. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like,
yeah.
But then he's like, I want to get a C5 Corvette. They're really cheap. I'm like, no.
You just hope he drives that way when you're not around.
Yeah.
Like, I know I did it anyway.
What 16-year-old kid needs a Corvette as their first car? It doesn't matter what year it is.
Yeah, right?
It doesn't need to happen.
He's got some good taste, though, huh?
Yeah.
So a couple rapid-fire questions.
Yes.
What is there a favorite book or author, seminar maybe, that you've attended that you feel like has made an impact on you personally or professionally?
So I was part of the Arete Syndicate. I was part of the inaugural group of the Arete Syndicate in 2018 and was part of that for 3 years. That's probably been one of the biggest impacts in my life, and got to see all kinds of speakers, and they all have their own books. So, I don't know if I have a favorite book, but I've read everybody's book.
What's it called? RK Syndicate?
Arete Syndicate.
I haven't heard of it.
So Andy Frisella, Ed Milet are the ones that formed it.
Yep.
And in the time that we saw some speakers there that came in for the events that we attended, we had Tim Grover come in and Urban Meyer come in.
He's got a great book, Relentless, I think it's called.
Yeah. Yep. Dave Goggins, just all kinds of different speakers that would come and give us information. And the relationships that are formed as a result of that group have been huge because they've helped me not only just from a business outlook and helping to grow my business, but given perspective of other businesses to be part of. So one of the things that I take pride in is the fact that working so diligently through real estate, it's given me the ability to invest in other things. So one of those other things is I actually own a group fitness gym over in front of Bexley at the Hub called PFit.
Okay.
So
I know PFit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my wife and I own PFit, and we decided to open that 2 years ago. It opened this year, and it's fantastic, great clientele.
Very cool.
Good gym, but that's a result.
I like that business model too because it's monthly subscriptions, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it's a smart business.
But real estate has been that avenue for me. So it's given me the ability. The harder I work in real estate, the more things I can do as a result.
Absolutely.
The bigger impact that I can make.
No doubt.
So not only is it health and fitness, but there's other things that we can do as well.
No doubt. Yeah, man, it makes a lot of sense. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
So I have two favorite TV shows. One of them is The Office, which my 15-year-old has watched all of them.
How can you
now.
not like The Office? It's classic.
So that's great.
Yes.
You know what I mean? that we can relate to that. And then I don't know, most people think it's probably the boring, weirdest show, but I love watching Gold Rush. I've watched it since it started,
Gold Rush,
15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's literally I feel like it's like a comparison to what I do every day. Like they dig holes in the ground, they find gold, and that's how they make money. I'm like, that's what I do every day.
I've never watched one episode.
Dig holes in the ground, and like we reach out to people, we sell houses, we do it again.
Yeah,
it's
that
just
makes
rinse
sense.
and repeat. It's the same kind of thing.
Funneling
just
through your leads and finding gold, right?
Yeah, and it's really just about the relationships around them. So that's what you're watching is the dynamic of relationships.
No doubt, yeah.
Which again, that's business and that's life.
Yep.
But that's probably my other favorite show to watch.
Do you have a favorite food?
Favorite food. I don't know. I'm pretty plain. I think
steak and potatoes type of guy.
I'm very meat and vegetable. Yeah, like where's the protein, and then follow it with something else after that.
There you go. Very American of you.
Yeah. I think the gym and all that too, you know what I mean?
That makes sense. Got to get that protein in.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. So one of my favorite questions, we're going to wrap up here so we can get you out on time. But I think, you know, people I interview work very hard, right? Mm-hmm. They build a great business as you have. And at some point, you kind of take that seat on the rocking chair, right? And look back and think about the type of legacy that you've been able to build, right? And what's most important to you. And so one of my last questions is always about, like, when you think about what you'd want to be most remembered for, right? Whether that's professionally or even personally, but what type of legacy do you think matters most to you, Sean, that you would want to be remembered for when you take that time to think back?
So when I look at kind of like my career and the evolution of that and how things have changed and transpired and shaped up since then, for me, it's kind of the ability to give back to the people around me, right? So, you know, looking at my kids now as they've grown, I can remember when my boys were, you know, younger like your boys, and now where they are now, I want them to see that they have the ability to change their life and do what it is that they want, be successful at it, but it depends what you put into it.
For sure.
And the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. You know what I mean? So I take pride in the fact that now I have a team and I can help them support their families. And I have another team with the other business, with PFIT, with the coaches there, and it helps support their families. And then all of the clients that we have in both businesses and what we do to help their families. So I think it's kind of goes back to, like, what can we give back? Mm-hmm. And that's the legacy I think that's most important for me.
Yeah, I think that is one of the cool things about real estate is there's so many ways to do that, you know, because there's many ways to be successful. It's not just one cookie cutter approach, and you found a niche for you that's worked, and obviously it's allowing you to now kind of invest in other niches as well, including the gym, things that hopefully will continue to allow you to make that impact for many years to come. So if anybody, Sean, wanted to pick your brain, maybe they connected with something about your story, they just wanted to, you know, connect with you, reach out to you, what's the best way for someone to do that?
So they can reach out to me. They can call me or text me on my cell phone, 813-382-9876. You can email SeanBatesRealEstate@gmail.com. Find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram. You know, we're out there.
All the socials. Yeah, we'll put your contact stuff on the description when we post everything and get it up there. The magician Rob will take care of all that.
Rob's amazing.
Down the road. But we're going to end the episode today with a challenge like we always do, and that is for anybody who watched live on Facebook or Instagram or watching this through our YouTube channel. What is one action step that you can take today from our conversation with Sean that you think is going to help you move forward? Tony Robbins talks a lot about that if you don't take an action step, you generally just end up forgetting everything that you just invested time on. So we just had a 40-minute conversation, 45 minutes almost. And so what's one thing? Maybe it's, one of the books that Sean recommended that you can pick up, or maybe you're thinking about a team and some of the things that Sean discussed about that he looks for when building a team. Maybe you need to document some of that and put some of it, pen to paper, figure out what your team's going to be about. Maybe you need to answer the question, why do I want to build a team, and put that down, or maybe you want to open up a gym like Sean, who knows? But the point is take one action step, one thing that's going to move you forward in the direction that you want, and that would make the time that you invested in watching the podcast worth it. And if you do that, then that's why we're here, is to add that value. So we'll see you in the next episode, of course, of Tampa Bay Real Producers. Thanks again, Sean, for being here.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah, no doubt. It was our pleasure. And we'll see you next time. Check it out.